right, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fireside Chat with Mawuli Davis, civil rights attorney and co-chair of Beacon Hill Black Alliance for Human Rights. Before we begin, please note that closed captioning is available and the instructions are now on the screen. Now, it is my esteemed pleasure to turn it over to our very own Vice President Porcina to welcome you all to today's event.
Thank you, Che. Mr. Davis, on behalf of President Zach, it is a great pleasure to welcome you to Agnes Scott College. I am personally thrilled to be in your Zoom staging area today. Your work in this community has inspired me and it gives me great hope. Agnes Scott College is thrilled to be able to celebrate Black History Month with the Beacon Hill Black Alliance for Human Rights and for the opportunity for this insightful conversation. Agnes Scott College's mission is to educate its students to think deeply, live honorably, and engage the social and intellectual challenges of our time. To bridge this and the work we have to do as an anti-racist campus, about 2 years ago, we proudly launched our Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Project, TRHT, part of a national effort to eradicate racial hierarchies and eliminate social inequities. The TRHT Courageous Conversation series engages campus and community leaders across racial lines in conversations on race and racism. But the college has a long history of partnering with local and community groups as well as many others in projects that advance transformational change, racial change, promote racial healing activities, and erase systemic barriers to equity and equal opportunity. However, the social inequities of the pandemic and the taking of more Black lives have lent a new sense of urgency to this work and to the need for having these conversations now and all the times. So we thank you sincerely. We thank everybody for showing up today. Thank you, Che, for hosting. And special thanks to our featured guest speaker, which will be formally introduced by Che. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose, for those warm words and kind welcome. And thank you all again for coming and joining us today. My name is Che Carter. I currently serve as the co-chair for the Coordinating Committee of Black Spaces, and I will be serving as today's facilitator. We are thrilled to be able to celebrate Black History Month with all of you and for the opportunity to host our honored guest for this insightful conversation. Before I introduce you to our guest today, and if you are just joining us, please know that closed captioning is available and the directions are now on the screen. My guest and I will engage in a conversation for the first part of the hour. During that time, all participants will be muted. There will be time for questions at the end of the conversation using the Q&A feature or chat room feature. Okay. So I'm going to start off with asking every participant to type in the chat, hello, and say hi to all of us over here, and indicate what they want to learn in today's experience. I love that, Jamila. I'm an open book. I love this learning a little bit of everything. Everybody's open. I love that. I love the energy that that brings to the space. Okay, we have some people interested in law. You come to the right place. We have a professional here. Okay. And as more people are typing into the chat, let's get started. Now it is my honor to introduce our featured guest for today. Mawuli Davis is a founding partner of the Davis Bozeman Law Firm, where he leads the firm's civil rights division. Mr. Davis attended the United States Naval Academy, where he played varsity basketball and earned a degree in political science. He served in the United States Navy as an officer while earning a master's in public administration from Bowie State University. Attorney Davis is a graduate of Georgia State University College of Law. Mr. Davis is recognized as a super lawyer, a distinction given to less than 3% of the lawyers practicing in Georgia. He has been recognized for his work as a civil rights attorney and advocate by the Gate City Bar Association, ACLU of Georgia, Urban League of Greater Atlanta, and Southern Center for Human Rights. He was named as one of Georgia's legal elite by Georgia Trend magazine. Mr. Davis, Mr. Davis's organizing efforts have included working with gang members in Chicago to participating in the UN World Conference Against Racism. He served as a legal observer for the Haitian presidential elections, along with his wife, educator and activist, Johnson Davis. I apologize. They developed If You Can See, You Can Be It legal awareness program. As a result of his many community endeavors, Mr. Davis was named Humanitarian of the Year by the Atlanta chapter of the NAACP, Kappa Alpha Sigma chapter of Phi Beta Sigma, and the Atlanta alumni chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Additionally, he has represented and organized legal effort for Occupy Movement, Moral Monday, and Black Lives Matter. Mr. Davis is founder and co-chair of the Beacon Hill Black Alliance for Human Rights and serves on the board of the Southern Center for Human Rights, Kilombo Institute, Walter Rodney Foundation, DeKalb Lawyers Association, and the Decatur Family YMCA. Mr. Davis has been married to his wife, activist educator Jonna Johnson Davis, for 22 years, and they have two sons, Kobe and Kari. Now we can get started with the questions. So, Mr. Davis, you ready?
Yes, yes,
All
yes. Thank
right.
you, Che. I'm excited, very grateful to be able to be here and have this conversation with the Agnes Scott community, as well as the community of Decatur and folks all around the Atlanta metro area and wherever people may be watching. So I'm excited.
Yes, I'm so glad to have you here. So, Mr. Davis, can you talk to us about your work as an attorney and in social justice and what drives you to do this work every day, especially as you reflect on this during Black History Month?
Yeah. So it's funny. I got involved in the movement, like focused in the movement, Black History Month of 1992. So I was in Philadelphia. I was in the Naval Shipyard. That's your hometown. And so I was in the Naval Shipyard. We started organizing a group. At the time, I was an officer. I was a young ensign that had just come out of the Naval Academy, had gone to in Athens, Georgia, to supply corps school. And so I got to Philly. When I get to Philly, I said, man, we have to have a Black History Month program on the ship. So as we're organizing this Black History Month program, I come into contact with a brother by the name of Butch Slaughter, and he was a enlisted man. I was an officer, but we just, that hierarchy that you have in the military, we just kind of didn't pay much attention to it and just connected. And he invited an elder on out of Germantown, an elder by the name of Dr. Edward Robinson. And so Dr. Robinson had written a book called The Journey of the Songhai People. And he started, and I write about it in my book, that experience because it was so pivotal. But what he started to say to us that day when all of us are gathered on the ship. If you can imagine, we're in dry dock down on Broad Street, and so we're on dry dock. It's all kind of machinery going, and there's a Black History Month luncheon on this ship. And this elder, he was 78 at the time, he starts off by saying, "Let me tell you who you are." And he goes from there, and he recounts for us, as young African American, sailors and officers, who we are as a people, and who we were, and what we came out of. And he made clear that we came out of communities, nations, when we were taken from the continent of Africa. He gave us a cultural, historical injection for me that has never, my life was transformed on that day. And so when he laid out the Songhai Empire and explained that that's what we came out of, it just changed my perspective. It all started to kind of click for me after that. And so since then, I have been involved in organizations that have been fighting in the interests of Black people. From that day on, I've been involved in, whether it's the Black Law Students Association as a law student, in Cobra, fighting around the issue of reparations, NAACP, obviously our most recent and focused effort in the Decatur area is the Beacon Hill Black Alliance for Human Rights. But it was the power of knowing who you are that led me to believe that we can't just celebrate Black History Month for one day or one month, that our work is ongoing, and that our history is really a way for us to see our way forward. Like, what do we learn from the trials, tribulations, and the triumphs of Black folk over the course of human history, right? So we don't start it with our enslavement. We go back to when we started civilization, and then build from there. And so I think I answered it. I got it. When I started talking about Philly and Dr. Robinson, I got about two chapters in the book
Listen,
that just talk about
I
Philly.
had no idea that you were Broad Street. I was like Germantown. I'm from Chestnut Hill. I'm from Germantown,
Yeah.
Mount Airy area. So I love that.
52nd
Uh,
Street. 52nd
yes,
Street. That was
yes.
that was I mean, Philly was my cultural birthplace. I'm from Chicago. Obviously
Okay.
have a lot of revolutionary spirits and organizers in
Yes.
Chicago, but it was Philly that just brought it all together, and just changed, um, it just clicked for me in Philly.
Yes, I see somebody wrote Chi-Town in the chat. So
That's
you've got
right.
some Chicago supporters in here. I love that. So the next question is, let me take you back to last year, to the height of the racial justice movement following the murder of George Floyd. You served as an attorney for Messiah Young, the Morehouse student who was pulled from his car along with his girlfriend during a protest in downtown Atlanta. The officers have since then been reinstated to their positions. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you saw following their arrests during the height of the racial justice movement? And how do we keep momentum, especially when it seems like the officers were not being held accountable?
Yeah. So what we see, and I think we have I've given some talks around the history of how we got here in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement, right? And I think it's important for us to understand that what we saw this past summer was a cumulative effect. That when you really go back to policing and police conduct, as it relates to Black people, Black and brown folk, and poor people in particular, is really rooted in the slave patrols of the South. And so policing in Black communities is historically not unlike what it was when they were trying to capture our ancestors and return them into slavery, or they felt and continue to feel, as you would even see in a Ahmaud Arbery situation, that they have some right over our bodies, some right over our freedom of movement, over our very liberty. And so what we saw is this accumulation of work over many years that led to really an overflow of Black radical resistance with the support of white allies. And that's what I think was so fundamentally different about this summer versus what we saw for Trayvon Martin. We organized one of the largest marches back when Trayvon Martin's murderer, George Zimmerman was acquitted. So we marched from Clark Atlanta University, CAU, all the way over to the CNN Center with 5,000 people. And the next time there was Mike Brown. Then we saw a young group called It's Bigger Than You, hashtag It's Bigger Than You. They brought 10,000 people. Then you saw brother who died in Philando Castile. And then you saw 15, 20,000 people. And so it's just people have been, the consciousness has been rising and rising and rising. And so with Messiah Young and Tanaya Pilgrim, when they're, think about this, they go to two of the most prestigious colleges and universities that our HBCUs have to offer, Morehouse and Spelman. They've done all that as a community we've asked them to do. They go to school, they participate, they're trying to be well educated and then pursue their dreams. And here they are, as they're driving through the protest, they stumble upon one of their classmates who's being physically assaulted by the police. And if you watch that video, you hear him crying out. I mean, it's akin to what you might hear aboard a slave ship or on a plantation, the way this young man, their classmate, is just crying out. And then Messiah has the presence of mind to try to record it and try to discourage the officer. Stop, what are you doing? And then that's when they targeted on him. And when they targeted on him, it just went from there. They smashed the windows, they tased him, and the officers are initially, they end up being charged, they end up being fired, and now there is a reversal to some degree of whether or not the officers should return to the force. And so what it tells us is that we have to be ever vigilant. And there isn't, in America, as it relates to racial justice, there isn't a stopping point. You don't ever arrive. There has to be constant, ongoing, organizing efforts to defeat and totally dismantle the system of white supremacy. And until that's done, no one is safe. Not black or white people, because it's not safe for white people in a system where white supremacy rules the day. Because what it does is it creates revolution, and it has to, because it's oppression, and oppression breeds the need for people to rebel. And you'll continue to see rebellions until the system is dismantled. And so this summer was, I think, a point that there's no turning back from. The awakening that happens and that has happened, there'll be people who, like I was in 1992, forever changed. They'll commit their lives to being involved in social justice work for the rest of their lives. And that is the power of organization and organizing and movement work.
I just want to shout out, there were a lot of Scotties who marched after that, after seeing that video and protested that. And it was just really hard to watch from, not even being in Atlanta and being at home in Philly and just watching that. It made my heart and my soul hurt. So I just feel so honored to be in your presence as you were fighting for those causes. And it was
But it's
just
you all,
heartening.
Che, I tell you, the Scotties and all of the Spelmanites and the men of Morehouse and the CAU and Morris, is you all. And I keep referring to the book. The title of my book is "We Need You," encouraging my son's generation for Black liberation. It's y'all, right? It's the young people who have always carried the fire and the yearning for justice. Because as you get older, and hopefully there are some among us who remain rebellious, but you become more conservative in your views. You become more interested in economic upward mobility. But there have to remain the remnant that know that in order for us to be free, it is a matter of vigilant, ongoing organizing and struggling. And so it's the young people who fuel that. And so make no mistake about it, y'all, those who put their bodies, whether it was in Philly or Chicago, wherever, out in the street, it created the kind of pressure that we hadn't seen before. And that's what we need, and we have to continue to build off of that momentum.
I agree. So, to ask the next question, as a Black man, how do you stay grounded when faced with so much injustice in your daily life, both professionally and personally? What do you what do you do for self-care?
That's a great question. One of my good friends and comrades in the work, Sister Nana Paris Harris, she was one of the first people to even start discussing self care, and she describes it self care as a revolutionary act, the ability for us to take care of ourselves as we take care of others. And I agree wholeheartedly. I spend a lot of time in the morning working, through some meditations, prayer, spiritual rituals, pouring of libations, honoring my ancestors, and then working out. I try to do at least 4 miles a day, and just um, try to feel the strength and the power of being alive in this moment and embracing it and knowing that we have the collective power to make it different for those who come after us. And my sister Mary Hooks from Song talks about our responsibility to avenge the wrongs that happened to our ancestors. And boy, that's a heavy one, right? I mean, that's like when you think about what your people went through in the morning when you wake up. How could you go to class and not be fully engaged? How could you have an opportunity to love your significant other and not love them fiercely? Because you're grounded in our experience as a people. And so that is for me self-care, getting a chance to spend time with my wife, my sons, travel. um, and then I think just being organizing in and of itself, the relationships that we build are so important to sustaining, because it's not the idea, and some of you all may have seen Judas and the Messiah. I won't spoil it in terms of the story of Fred Hampton, and to probably a little, for me, too much of a degree, the story of the informant who betrayed him. But the reality is that in the midst of struggle, we lived and we loved and we build relationships, and that's my message, is that it's a joyous journey. It's hard, but when you're on the right side of history, you just know who you rolling with. I mean, to be rolling with a Rosa Parks and a Malcolm X and a John Henry Clark, like, to know that you are extending that work is, for me, from that perspective, a part of my self care, because it's rooted in what we know is the direct lineage of struggle and of building. And that's the other thing, and I'll be quiet, is that this isn't just about protest. It's about building institutions and families and communities that are, again, and I use the term again, safe and sacred spaces. Because Black folk have always built safe and sacred spaces where we could just be, where we could be an African people without apology, where we could be Black without unashamedly. And so the building of those spaces, that's a beauty. Anytime you build something, it's a beautiful thing. Those who are building businesses, and you and your organizing, Che, you've built something, and it's the beauty is in the building. And so that is a way of not, carrying this like it's a burden. It's a blessing to be awake and to know that you got a purpose and that you got work to do. That's a blessing.
You didn't say anything wrong. Listen, my mom, I think when I was growing up, I think she would say it, if not every day, every other day, she would tell me I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams. And so anything that I'm doing, I do in the honor of them. whether it be my education, how I carry myself as a Black woman in this world. I owe it all to them, and therefore I have to make sure that I take care of myself. Self care is really important, especially for Black people. So I just want to applaud you for that. Some people don't really get to have the space to ponder it. And there may be some people in this room who may or may not have been able to take the space to ponder, do I need self care? Do I deserve self care? And you do. As Black people, we do. We do deserve self care. I'm going to ask question number 4. Mr. Mawuli, you've done so much work as an attorney, but also with community organizations. Can you tell us what you are currently doing right now with Beacon Hill Black Alliance for Human Rights, and how can we as Scotties get involved?
Yeah. So one of the things that we talk about is the limitations of the law. And I think we saw it play out, and we've always seen it play out as it relates to Black people in America, but Black people worldwide, where the law that we want to work in our favor has oftentimes failed us because it just has been misapplied or has not been applied in the same way it has to others, and the discretion that is woven into every decision from the from stopping someone to frisking them to ticketing them to arresting them to recommending that they go to serve time in jail. Those are all of the discretion, and in it, inherently in a system that is fundamentally racist, you have the effect of Black people being bodies upon bodies stacked in. And so I've never believed that the law in our practice, no matter how many cases we are successful in resolving and settling or taking to trial, that the law was going to free us. It has to be the people. It has to be the masses of our people deciding consciously that the system as it exists is not, um, we're not going to allow it to continue. So we see the work on a local level, and you see it nationally, and you see it internationally. Beacon Hill Black Alliance for Human Rights is really a local effort that is intentional about connecting our struggle to a broader human rights struggle of people of African descent the world over. You know, what we're experiencing in Decatur is not a unique Black experience. It's an experience that our folk are experiencing all over the world, where there are Black people and people of European descent in the same space. Typically, you're seeing exploitation and domination, gentrification, you name it, you're seeing it, and we're experiencing it. And so in Decatur, one of the things that where it was most obvious was in the education. And so our initial fight, and continues to be, has been equity in education, the 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 disparate treatment of African American students in terms of discipline, the achievement gap, or the debt owed to children in our school system is work that's being done. But right now we have a lot of energy and attention, and I just applaud Sister Fanta High, our co-chair, who is really leading the work of working with young people from Decatur High School. And so the art work that's being done and produced, and I encourage people to go to the Beacon Hill website and tap in, because we're looking for artists, Black artists. And what we know in the removal of the Confederate monument was that it's not enough just to remove something that was anti us, but we have to replace and build spaces that affirm us, that affirm Black lives, that affirm Indigenous and Native American lives in ways that we haven't seen. And that's the work that Fonta and Paul McClellan have been leading. And we just have an incredible collection of community people who are just like, I live here, I want to make it better. And this is a vehicle to do that. We're working very closely with the Black Parent Alliance. And so they're organizations. And that's the thing about about struggle is that there is no competition, because we're all in a situation where our children are losing, and so we have to collaborate, not compete and collaborate. And so we welcome Scotty's and the Agnes Scott community and family to continue to work with us, because we've had great support. We've had some of the students come out and support our book giveaways that Brother Kunle and Sister Dr. Don Bolton put together, where we were giving books away and ice cream, encouraging reading of our young people. So there's so many different facets of work that needs to be done, and that's, I think, what it says to anyone: get in where you fit in. It is there's no reason for you to say, where our leaders. And all we say is what Dr. Clark would say: you have to look in the mirror to find your ally, and then join us. But go to the website. It's a lot of great work being done. We're definitely pushing to remove the genocide canon that's on the square, because when you think about it, we're in the process of trying to get a statue of John Lewis to right in the same space. Isn't that powerful? Right in the same space that this Confederate monument stood for over 100 years. You'll have prayerfully a young version, a student version, because he started in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee as a student activist, and that's what people forget sometimes. But to have that statue. But the issue is, you can't have a statue of John Lewis, this freedom fighter, and just 50 feet away have a cannon that was used to take out a whole population of our Native brothers and sisters. It's just it. Here's a nonviolent freedom fighter, and 50 feet from him, you've got a cannon that was used as genocide against Native. So that's got to go, and that's the work of Beacon Hill and the young people that are doing the work out of Decatur High School, and a part of the young organizers. So I'm sorry if these answers are too long.
No,
So
they're
much good work.
fine. I just want to point out something that you said that was so poignant, was about Black people and Black education getting equity and not equality. Equality is just not enough. We've been disadvantaged, disenfranchised for hundreds of years. People giving us equality just isn't enough anymore. Equity is what we need. So I just think that was very intentional, and I really appreciate that. So the last question I want to ask is, at Agnes Scott, our students are known for being staunch advocates and active in the community. So I'm sure they'd all appreciate your thoughts on the following question. How can young people, particularly students, continue to mobilize and hold their elected officials accountable?
Oh, that's critical. That's critical work. I think we one of the organizations that I work with is called Black Man Lab. And while it grew out of the need for us to create safe and sacred space for young Black men, the work that we're doing has expanded into having sisters and young men involved as well. And the work that we're doing right now in this moment is a we need you, young creators, innovators, and entrepreneurs. And so we have a collection of probably 60 to 70 young people from 12 to 26 that are a part of this process. And what we're saying in that work is that you have to center yourself, collaborate, and then create. And the centering yourself in the work is know when you come into a space, who walked in this space. When we're intentional about naming the organization Beacon Hill in honor of our ancestors who lived in a community called Beacon Hill, that had families, that built churches and communities called Beacon Hill, and that we have to center ourselves in that, so you don't come in and say, here's the answer. Well, who's already been working on this work before you decided that you were going to work on this work. And so I think the centering is important. collaborating with community organizations, because as students graduate, we're going to stay, we'll be here. And so um, there has to be that connection. And as Che, as you're about to graduate, who's the next Che that's coming that needs to be a part of the Beacon Hill work right now, and we can plug them in as a freshman or a sophomore or a junior, and we can work, 2 or 3 years with them, and but they've already identified the next group of students. So it has to be intentional, right? The oppression that we experience, it isn't an accident. This is organized terrorism, and it's intense. And so we have to be willing to be intentional about organizing. We will not get free by accident. It has to be a level of intentionality that says, hey, they're doing this work in this space. Let me join them. Let me help bolster what they're doing. And in the process, I'll learn, and then I may have something to add in terms of value. And if an organization is not what you want it to be, you help, is your responsibility to help build it out until you feel like you can 100% support it. But we can't look for the perfect in this work. We have to look for the people, and obviously people are not perfect, and you're going to find folks who have contradictions, myself included. But the struggle is to address those contradictions and to be willing to organize with other people, and to really give them some grace, right? We all need some grace. Like, man, I could have done that differently. I could have gotten back to that person or done this or done that. But we all need some grace in order for us
Hindsight is
to do it.
2020.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, thank you so much for answering these questions. I just want to open the floor up very quickly, well, not very quickly, for the next 10 minutes for people to ask Mr. Mawuli and Miss Jana questions about their work. So I'm going to give about 2 minutes for people to put their questions in the Q&A slot. I think that's still available. Let me open that. Not in the chat box, but in the Q&A section. And we'll give some time for that.
And I better say it's Jana.
Jana, Miss
Yes.
Jana, I am
Yes, yes.
so sorry. He doesn't
I
let me
didn't want
say
her to.
wrong the whole time.
That's my fault.
That's
That's my fault.
okay. That's
I take
okay. But thank
responsibility.
you.
Jana,
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
thank you so much for correcting me. So I see a question here. What are some of the race and equity issues being overlooked related to COVID-19?
Oh yeah. That's key. We and I hate that Jana had to jump off, but she has really helped lead an effort with a coalition that we formed, Georgia Coalition to Save Lives, around COVID. And what we saw happening was um, the the governor's plan to reopen, and for from our perspective, the essentially ignoring the science, that we're going to have deaths, and we were going to have an in that we would be disproportionately impacted, which we have been. And so I just saw an article yesterday, and I encourage you all to look it up. I think it may be a Harvard study. Not that that gives it any more validity than any other study, but it they discuss, had reparations been given, the impact of COVID would not be as severe as it is. Had reparations been given, because the wealth gap would be closed, and so much of what we see in terms of healthcare is directly connected with wealth, and with the challenge between those who have and those who do not, who have top-notch health care and regularly go to make visits to the doctor, and have some level of trust of our healthcare system. We have a history that makes us somewhat concerned about what is safe. Are they being honest with us? When you look up the Tuskegee syphilis experiment and other instances, when you look at the sterilization of Black women throughout the South, but you hear of they described it as, I guess, the Mississippi appendectomy, just the sterilization of Fannie Lou Hamer. So there's a whole history of how the healthcare system has, just like all other systems in America, have disproportionately negatively impacted, Black people.
And thank you for that question, Ms. Jackson. I'm going to give one more question to make sure that we are on time. An attendee said, thanks for being with us today. What can Decatur residents without kids in the school system do to advocate for equity in our city schools?
Join one of the organizations. Join Beacon Hill. Um, what we what we realize is that the more organized we are, it's about mobilization. If 10 people came out after George Floyd was murdered, after that 8 minutes and 46 seconds, if 10 people took to the streets of Minnesota and 10 took to the streets of Atlanta, we wouldn't have had the impact that we've had. We have to have the masses of our people, and we have to continue to educate ourselves. And we issued a challenge. There in addition to what was happening nationally within the city of Decatur, we had some of the white students at Decatur High School making racist remarks that were captured on video that deeply injured our young people. When you hear them say certain things, it it hurts. And our young people, my sons included. Interestingly, when they were in high school, this was 6 and 8 years ago, when they were in high school, they thought that they were tripping on me, like, Dad, you doing all of this work, racism is dying out. Like, they thought that it was going to just die out. That was such, back then, that in their high school minds, as they got an opportunity to go to school with their white counterparts, they were thinking, man, I'm cool with this kid. This is gonna be old news. Fast forward January 6th, this isn't going anywhere. Um, the legal scholar and now ancestor Derek Bell in Faces of the Bottom of the Well, he talked about the permanence of racism, that it serves in American society as a stabilizing force. When when poor white people realize that they have more in common with Black people than they do with white billionaires, then the system will have some significant issues to deal with, because then you'll have a united front around equity, around a redistribution of wealth, and how we move forward in a way that is humane. That it shouldn't be okay that over 400,000 Americans have died, and the approach has been like, hey, whatever. I mean, really. And that we have to create a more humane society, and that requires, again, our opportunity to push forward a more people-centered movement for change.
Thank you so much for that answer. I wanted to let you have any final thoughts to leave with the crowd before we close. We do have a hard stop at 3:25, but I
Yeah.
just wanted to open the floor to you if you want to give us any more words of wisdom.
Well, I want to. I'll close with this. Um, this is when I was finishing up my book. The publisher, Third World Press, they asked that, in light of what happened in Georgia, in terms of the election of Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, and the turnout of changing the political dynamic in Georgia, and then the insurrection on January 6th, and then the inauguration on January 20th. for me to reflect on that and add a additional kind of conclusion to my book. And I did that, and I reflected on all of that, right? The victories, the insurrection, and then the inauguration, and what it all means. And I'll leave us with my hope, because I'm very hopeful. Um, and I'll say, um, we are called to create relationships, communities, organizations, institutions, nations, and ultimately a world where we are safe and our lives are considered sacred again. It is when we make the world safe for us, it becomes safe for everyone. I'm eternally grateful that on a daily basis, to varying degrees, I am able to witness comrades and friends engaging in this centering, collaboration, and creation. They are closing jails, removing Confederate monuments, supporting political prisoners, building schools, creating businesses, changing the political landscape of states, defending their lives, and so many other expressions of self determination and life affirmation. The list of people who join together in mind, body, and soul to do the work in different facets of our movement is truly amazing and inspiring. The audacity which allows them to build a new world every day has also birthed organizing models and strategies for us to clearly see our way forward, even beyond the chaos. I believe with absolute certainty that for these life sustaining efforts to prevail and for victory to be won, we need you. Thank you very much.
Wow. I need to buy the book. I
I'm
need
gonna
to
send
buy
you
the
a
book.
copy. I'll send you
Please,
one.
please. Oh my goodness. That was so, that was a perfect way to close. Thank you so much. Again, I want to thank you, Mr. Davis, for sharing your expertise, your work, and insights with us today. Thank you to our audience members for joining us and for continuing to celebrate Black History Month at Agnes Scott College. We still have a few more events planned, so please follow up with us on social media for more information on upcoming events or check out the campus calendar. If you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to contact us at diversity@agnes.edu. Again, thank you all for joining us and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.